Thank you for staying with us. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria says, of course, it's holding already its Monetary Policy Committee meeting this week, which starts today. That will be 21st and 22nd at its headquarters in Abuja. Now, at the last meeting, the committee retained the monetary policy rate, which benchmarks interest rates in the country at 27.5% for the second time. Meanwhile, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, says Nigeria's headline inflation rate had dropped to 22.22% in June 2025, down from 22.97% in May. The statistics body said food inflation rate in July 2025 and was 21.97% on a year-on-year basis. The body added that these figures will be part of our conversation at that meeting. These and many more would be our focus on this flip side. And my guest is Mr. Tajuddin Ibrahim. He is the Director, Research and Strategy with Chapel Hill, Denham. Mr. Taj, like I fondly call him, good afternoon and thank you so much. It's good to see you this afternoon.
Thank you for having me on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I think I should let you start today. The meeting is on already, and of course, we know the discussions and the communique will be out by this time tomorrow, obviously. But what do you think will be on that table while they try to brainstorm at this time? What will be running through the members, the committee members? What will be running through their mind at this time?
I think a couple of things will be running through their minds, and I think it is interesting if we can look at it from a local environment standpoint and also from an external environment perspective. So when we talk about the local environment, they will be looking at economic growth. Unfortunately, we do not have the Q1 GDP growth number published for now. So the number they will still be depending on will be the Q4 2024 GDP number. And another indicator that they will be considering locally is inflation rate. Aside from inflation rates, they will also be looking at foreign portfolio inflows into the Nigerian financial system, particularly the Nigerian capital market. I reckon also that they will be considering, local factors such as, the state of security in the country and how, that is, impacting the, level of food prices across the country. Another, indicator to my mind or factor for consideration, in my view, is the fiscal, authority, what the government is generating in form of income, and what are the exposures in terms of debt for the government and how rapidly those debt levels are rising. So I reckon that that would be another major factor for consideration: government revenue and government spending. Another indicator in my view, which is a very important one, is the exchange rate. That is, the exchange rate of the US dollars to the naira will be a major local factor for consideration. I think all of those elements are local factors that the monetary policy committee members will be brainstorming over, and they will also consider external environment, looking at what is happening in terms of global tension in key areas or regions across the world. Interestingly, under consideration will be interest rates and monetary policy decisions being made in the US, for instance, being the largest economy in the world, and also the impacts that the US has on the Nigerian economy from a foreign portfolio investment standpoint. I reckon that, these elements, most of them, will be on the table for consideration for the members of the MPC today and tomorrow.
Interesting stuff. Households and businesses, of course, indicates that transport and energy costs remains high. You would agree with me, Mr. Tajuddin. Additionally, insecurity remains in some areas, major food producing areas, Benue, Plateau, and concerns about the impact of flood on other regions. Global economy, you've also identified, it remains uncertain. How do you think we'll juggle all of this together?
Well, I think the way they will be looking at it is to consider the flood events that you mentioned, for instance, had a negative impact on the food supply chain in the month of June, because it was reflecting in the food inflation that jumped on a month-on-month basis to 3.25% in 1 month. That is, in the month of June, average food prices were higher by about 3.25% compared to the level in May. So if we were to look at that on a monthly basis over like a 12-month period, of course, we'll be talking about food inflation that is well over 36%. But while that may not materialize, I think they will view it as like a one-off event, particularly because it was driven by the rainy season, and I think it is something that we would not see more than like 1 or 2 months before we end this year. So this is the reason that I believe that the Monetary Policy Committee members should be considering monthly inflation to monitor it over the next couple of months, instead of looking at just the year-on-year inflation rate, which is showing a downtrend to 22.22% in the month of June. That, for instance, may make the committee members to feel like the overall price level, overall inflationary pressure is coming down. But that is not the true case. The true situation is that we have flood events having a negative impact on food supply, and we also have elements of level of insecurity also playing a negative role in the inflation rates that we saw for the month of June. So I think there were recommendations around how the fiscal authority has to strengthen security for that. There will also be recommendation by the committee, in my view, on how the fiscal authority should work around ensuring that events of flood are well managed and taken care of going forward. Because if we do not address it, it will be like a recurring decimal, and it will be like an annual event that we have no permanent solution to. And I think that is not befitting for us as a country.
So are you part of, do you believe or do you think that it's unlikely to see any shift, talking about reduction, till about maybe September, October? Take it away. Go ahead.
So if we look at July, my view is that when they meet today, tomorrow, there will be no reduction. And I think also for September, it possibly will be too early for them to be considering reducing the interest rate. And, I think maybe from November, we may see up to like 100 basis points, cut in interest rate. But overall, my view is that the Monetary Policy Authority should not be in a hurry to cut interest rates for the following reasons. Number one, we are still seeing inflationary pressure on a month-on-month basis. Even though we have a situation where year-on-year inflation is showing a downtrend, there is need for the policy members to watch the trend of monthly inflation for a little longer, maybe the next 3 to 4 months, to see how it behaves before they can begin to consider cutting interest rates. The second element to my mind is that we have a stable exchange rate, which is commendable, and I really credit the central bank on the back of this. But the reality to my mind is that all the stability is being underpinned by foreign portfolio inflows, because we have seen elevated levels of interest rates that has allowed more foreign investors to come into the Nigerian market and invest in automobiles. So those automobiles have really allowed us to generate more portfolio inflows. And we have to bear in mind that these portfolio inflows are liabilities in the balance sheet of the central bank. So there will be a point that they will mature. If upon maturity they cannot afford, they cannot roll over at either the same rate or slightly higher rate, they may threaten to nil. So that is what we call capital reversal. So we need to manage the risk of capital reversal, because if not, it may materialize, and if it crystallizes, it may result in the pressure in the exchange rate. And exchange rate pressure eventually will lead to higher inflation. There was already an indication in the first quarter, because in the first quarter of this year, the CBN reported that Nigeria closed that first quarter with a balance of payment deficit of $2.77 billion from a balance of payment surplus of $1.1 billion in the final quarter of 2024. So what that means is that there were some levels of capital reversal because some foreign investors took their money out of this market. There were some elevated level also of debt servicing by the federal government. So on the back of all of these elements, and bear in mind also the US Fed is not cutting interest rates yet. Yeah. So interest rate in that market is still good for foreign investors to stay there and take no risk in frontier market like Nigeria. So